sound Jamaica. Bob Marley, come on!
Yeah, this is my identity.
It's certainly the most ambitious and detailed film ever about Bob Marley. And I think anybody, even the most rabid fan, is going to find new stuff in here, new footage, new information, new versions of songs.
It is mentioned of in the Bible that there shall be a music that all people shall play and dance and sing with. What other music could that be? Reggae.
I mean, I think everybody likes Bob Marley. That's one of the interesting things about it. You don't find anyone who goes, oh God, I hate Marley. Oh God, it's awful music. You can't really not like it. You can either be more into it or less into it. I was a fan when I was a teenager. In 1980, so shortly before Bob died, I bought Uprising, like one of the first half dozen albums I ever bought. And obviously it's one of his iconic albums. And as a 13-year-old boy growing up in the back country of Scotland, it was really exciting, accessible because it's so melodic, but also rebellious and kind of anti-establishment, which is exciting for a teenager, but also mysterious, and it has this mystical quality to it, like a lot of his work does. And then, as a 13-year-old, you're listening to all these lyrics about Jah and Haile Selassie, and you're wondering, what the hell is this? What is Rastafari? What is that?
All your parents do is smoke and play music. Nobody wanted their children around us.
The thing about Marley is he is everywhere around you. He's on T-shirts around you. He's on murals. He's always being played somewhere. When I was making this movie, I actually did an exercise of, going around trying to make a note every time I heard or saw a reference to Bob. And some days you would get up to about a dozen. And it's kind of amazing, you're just crossing the road, you hear, three little birds, in a restaurant you'd hear, an acoustic version of No Woman, No Cry, whatever. It's everywhere. But the downside of that, of course, is that because it's so ubiquitous, you kind of don't hear it anymore. And in a way, that's one of the reasons to make a film like this, is that you hope that you can elucidate the music in a way that makes people actually want to go back to it and listen to it in a fresh way and go, oh, I sort of always knew those songs, but actually now I'm listening to it in a different way.
There was that sense that he's about to be massive.
Some people took a long time to persuade to come to the table and to give the interviews, but in the end, everybody did. Because I think people feel like they're getting older. And everybody who knew Bob intimately, they're now in their 60s or older, and so I think people want to talk about it. And even the people who maybe had the most reason to feel embittered, actually, I was surprised by once they got going. There's so much warmth and affection for him, for Bob, that it kind of overrides everything else. So I think that the film is very much a warts and all portrait of the man. It's very detailed in what it says about him and his private life, and it says about his behaviour. But overriding all of that, I think, is the tremendous sense of affection that pretty much everybody around him has. Even the sort of girlfriends who feel like they've been sort of pushed to the side or forgotten, or he's been. One of them says at the end of her interview, she says, "But we just couldn't hate him." I just couldn't hate him. He was too nice. And then I think that's sort of what the overriding feeling is.
Are you a rich man? Do you have a lot of possessions?
Position make you rich? I don't have that type of richness. My richness is life.
You try and balance the emotions and the humour. It's not a short film, and so you need to sort of entertain people along the way. And the characters are just brilliant. I mean, I think that's almost more than anything else. It's a film filled with wonderfully larger-than-life characters. So there's a lot of, obviously you're learning about Bob, but you're also learning about these different individuals who are important, perhaps in their own right in Jamaica at the time, and you're learning about the history of Rasta, and you're learning about the history of Jamaican politics, and you're learning about, how Bob created songs, all these sort of background things, which are not strictly part of the life, but you need them in order to understand the life. And so, the serious things, the sad things. I think a lot of people shed a tear in the last 20 minutes, which is really gut-wrenching. And as Bob is, dying so unnecessarily of cancer, but also there's a lot of humour and even some bits of tension around the period where Bob is shot. Somebody tries to assassinate him. Yeah, Lee Scratch Perry is maybe my favourite interviewee ever, because I didn't know what I was going to be able to get out of him, because he's notoriously eccentric and doesn't really operate to the rules of the normal world. And we went over to Switzerland to interview him, where he now lives, in kind of bourgeois splendour, bizarrely, and you can't really ask him. Well, you can ask him questions, but you're not going to get responses back that are sort of necessarily that kind of rational. But somehow hidden in what he says, in little doses, there's real insight and kind of wisdom, which I suppose is what you expect, because he's a tremendous artist, and arguably the man who created reggae, or certainly one of the people who was there at the beginning. One of my favourite comments in the whole film comes from him, and maybe the film that kind of defines what it is about Marley that's so great comes from him. And it's very simple. I said to Scratch, why do people love Bob's music so much? And he said, it's the message him tell and the way that him tell it. He tells it so that you have to believe it. And it's that idea that, yes, he's got an important message which he really believes in, but it's actually more than that. It's the voice that you have to believe, because he's lived through so much. He's experienced so much himself that he's sincere in what he's saying.